Welcome, everyone. Thank you all for joining us tonight as we launch the fourth annual all-teen issue of Inlandia's online literary journal, Inlandia, a Literary Journey. That's a tongue twister. My name is Katie Porter, and I'm Executive Director of Inlandia Institute. I am also the founding editor of the Online Literary Journal. I founded it back in 2010, and it is just a pleasure to me to see how it has flourished under Victoria Wattle's guidance. And I'm so thrilled to be able to present the work of these talented teens today. This issue was guest edited by teens, and all of the work in this issue is by teens from around the region and around the world. So before we get started, Inlandia Institute respectfully acknowledges and recognizes our responsibility to the original and current caretakers of this land, water, and air here in inland Southern California, the Cahuilla, Tongva, Luiseno, and Serrano peoples, and all of their ancestors and descendants, past, present, and future. Today, the Inlandia region is home to many Indigenous peoples from all over the world, and we express our gratitude to them for allowing us the opportunity to live and work on these homelands. And now, just a few housekeeping notes. We would like you to know that the event is closed captioned. If you click on the CC icon in the lower portion of your screen. And also, this is view only. So if you do have any questions, please feel free to drop them into the Q&A box, and we can ask those questions of our teens and students later on in the program, and our adults if you'd like. If you want, you are also feel free to use the chat function, but please direct your questions to the Q&A. And this, if I didn't already mention it, this is being recorded, so you may view it later or share it with family and friends after the fact. So it gives me great pleasure to introduce the managing editor of Inlandia, a Literary Journey. She has been running the journal now for, I believe, 5 years or so. Victoria Wattle is the author of Acts of Contrition short stories. And her work has been featured in literary journals and anthologies, and it was included in the Best Short Stories from the Saturday Evening Post Great American Fiction Contest. And she spent her career in education as a teacher librarian, and she loves working with teens, as is evidenced by these wonderful issues of the all-teen issues. So let's welcome Victoria Wattle.
Well, hi, and thank you, Katie. And I'm really glad to be here and to see the teens here local. And I know we did have a lot of teens from other places. In fact, there were several teens from India, but you know, the time frame probably isn't going to work out for most people that far away. But kudos to you if you're very far away and working with us. I just want to say this is our fourth teen issue for those of you who are new to it. And about a little over 4 years ago, I had asked, you know, this is a question, why don't we have a teen issue? And everybody was like, yeah, why don't we? You know, that was really good because that was the first one and it was really great. This is the second teen issue that we've actually done during the pandemic. And believe me, when we did the last one, it was just the pandemic was so awful. And I never thought that we would be doing a second teen issue also in the pandemic. And I'm just so pleased that so many teens are continuing to create during the pandemic. I myself have had a super difficult pandemic with several deaths in my family. And I can say that working with teens and just seeing that they're creating and continuing, they were creating then, last year and creating now is very helpful in moving toward a sense of peace and that kind of thing. I did take a lot of pictures. I've been taking a lot of pictures. I go out to kind of get rid of the grief and walk. And so a lot of those, if you see a lot of pictures in the journal that are like nature pictures that don't have any attribution, they're just pictures that I took while I was like wandering around thinking about life blooming again. And I think that's what is fun about this issue. In looking at some of the things that I put in the letter from the editor, like just some of the simple, really fun things. Like there were things like the one that I'm thinking of is called Between the Chairs. It's just a little poem about being in school and how you drop things between the chairs and lose them forever. And I love that because I thought, don't we all want to be back at school dropping and losing our things between the chairs? And just had some like fun picked images of the artists that put things that were, that you would, you know, actually lose between chairs. So that was really fun. And some of the other stuff was directly connected to the pandemic. I know the Mind versus Room was by Jenna Lane. And that was like, what is it like to be in your room all the time? So I felt like she was, part of this was really just like a historical document for the pandemic. But then a lot of the teens wrote about identity, and identity in all sorts of ways. There were some pieces on gender identity, and I think we might hear some of those today. Avery and Chris, I know, did some really nice pieces, and they're here today, so we hope to hear from them. But I also there were a lot like identity within the family, within the culture and the history of that. And I thought those were really great too. And Jesse actually had a really good one and called A Child Story. And I hope that we hear that today. And I remember even reading these pieces was so moving. I was sitting in the room, like, you know, reading and working on things kind of late at night, because that's the way things go right now. And I was saying, oh no, oh, like, you know, that. And my husband came in and said, what's wrong? I said, I'm reading this piece about this woman who survived the Great Leap and the Cultural Revolution in China. And when you take it on an individual level, it's just amazing and difficult story. And so I hope that we hear a little bit of that today, so you can hear about how amazing and difficult. But I love that all of these things were identity pieces. I think maybe we are looking a lot at who we are when we're stuck at home and not at school with our friends. So I want to just say welcome to all the teens, how pleased I am and how important this has been for me to be able to work on this during a period that has been like I said, a lot of adjustment in my family, really difficult period. This has just been one of the charms of this time that has got me through. So thank you all very much for submitting your pieces and then for being here to read them. Thanks. Sadna?
Yeah, well, thank you, Victoria. You know, I am just so excited to be able to introduce some of our readers. And here, I'm just going to do a quick screen share so everybody can see the journal. For our folks who are watching, if you want to check it out, it is inlandiajournal.net. That's INLANDIA journal.net. And it features great art and all kinds of fun pictures and poetry and short stories and nonfiction. So please pop over there and have a look when you have a chance. And now, without any further delay, I would like to introduce our readers. So our first reader will be Rachel Bach, who is a graduating senior at Los Osos High School. She has spent her last 4 years singing, debating, and advocating for racial equality in education. As the district lead for the Diversify Our Narrative national campaign and editor-in-chief of her online journal, Council on AAPI Relations, she learned to embrace her heritage and integrate cultural advocacy into all her passions. After high school, she will be attending Stanford University with a major in political science. So let's welcome Rachel.
Hello. Yes, the name of my piece is The History of the Dog Eating Stereotype. I'll just get started. Along with countless other Asian American elementary school children, 6-year-old me, who attended a predominantly white school, was a constant victim of the dog eating stereotype. I was incessantly pestered about whether the meat in the side dishes I brought for lunch was dog meat, despite my persistent attempts to explain that dog eating was not at all a common practice among Asians, not to mention Asian Americans. I started to beg my mom to stop packing me Korean dishes and to instead send me to school with chicken nuggets and Uncrustables. It was not until K-barbecue became trendy and fashionable among my non-Asian peers that I started to bring the food of my heritage to school again. But children were not and are not the only perpetrators of this stereotype. The only way children could have known to ask their Asian American peers about whether they ate dog meat was if this stereotype was passed down through the generations. The dog eating stereotype has historically been utilized to belittle Asians and Asian immigrants, as well as to justify imperialistic pursuits of Asian countries like the Philippines. At the 1904 World's Fair in St. Louis, the Philippine Exposition depicted Igorot people grilling dogs. The purpose of the exhibit was to portray the indigenous people of the Philippines as primitive and in much need of the reconstruction that the United States was so generously bringing upon the nation with their victory in the Philippine-American War. A century later, the dog-eating stereotype is still being used to justify xenophobia and white supremacy. Just 4 years ago, in 2016, Oregon Senate candidate Faye Stewart suggested that taking in Vietnamese refugees back in the 1970s and 80s was a mistake because they were harvesting people's dogs and cats, and that they should not make the same mistake with Syrian refugees. The dog-eating stereotype is ever present in today's politics and social issues. The recent global fervor surrounding the Yulin Dog Meat Festival in China has reinforced the assumption that all Asians eat dogs. The festival spans 10 days and was first introduced in 2009 as a celebration of the summer solstice. After a flood of protests arose across social media, and among the vast majority of Chinese residents who found the practice to be distasteful, the number of dogs slaughtered during the festival decreased from 15,000 to 3,000. In fact, the campaign against the Yulin Dog Meat Festival was instigated by the Chinese themselves, as Dr. Peter Lee, policy advisor for China and Humane Society international activist, told Business Insider. From there, they gained international support as well as xenophobic comments that hindered their efforts more than helping them. Rather than using their platforms to stand in solidarity with Chinese protesters, many social media users took advantage of this ruckus to express their hatred for China. Even though most Chinese people had never eaten dog meat and were instead fighting to put an end to this festival, the entire country and Chinese Americans were stereotyped and labeled as uncivilized dog eaters. Above all, it's extremely important to note the hypocritical nature of dog eating even being used as a negatively connotated trope. At the root of this problematic stereotype is the Western double standard of what is civilized and what is barbaric. Though both dogs and cows are animals that have been domesticated by humans, slaughtering cows and eating hamburgers is considered civilized behavior, while eating dog meat is quick to be criticized as savagery. However, the variable between these two scenarios that fuels the stereotype is not the inherent value of the type of animal being eaten, but rather the culture in which the animal is being eaten. Dog meat does remain a traditional food among farmers in select areas of southern China, India, Nigeria, Vietnam, South Korea, Ghana, and Switzerland. Yet, we don't hear much from the mainstream media about dog meat consumption in Switzerland, a predominantly white country, or about how the consumption of dogs is legal in most states throughout the US. Remember that though dog meat can be considered traditional food among some individuals of a country, that does not mean that every person or even a majority of the people from that country eats dog meat. It also doesn't mean that the people living in towns where dog meat is a traditional food are uncivilized. It has been a part of their diet for centuries, just like cows, pigs, and chicken have been an essential part of the Western diet. I am in no way in support of the Yulin Dog Meat Festival and its cruel practice of killing thousands of dogs within a 10-day time span. But I am also firmly against the mass slaughtering of cows and pigs in the US and European countries. Limit your own consumption of meat if the pictures of bloodied dogs from the Yulin Festival disturb you, because the butchering of any animal is bloody and cruel. Compared to the 20 million dogs consumed in China every year, 25 million broiler chickens, 11 million ducks, 121 million pigs, and 800,000 cows are killed every day in the US. Using euphemisms like beef and pork to mask your participation in the meat industry does not make you more civilized than individuals who consume dog meat. There is no such thing as humane slaughter. And you'll be able to read the rest on the online journal. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Rachel. I think we're all converted. I hope that we all have a greater understanding now of the cultural differences surrounding eating meat and practices. So let's go to our next reader, who is Avery Garcia. And they have been a finalist in the Alta Loma Council PTA's Reflections Contest and has just recently earned a gold key and a silver national medal in the Scholastic Art and Writing Awards for their short story, Osiris. Currently, they are working on their first novel, Crooked Teeth, though they consider themselves an essayist and poet, as well as an author, exploring romantic and Gothic themes with many allusions to Greco-Roman mythology and history. So let's welcome Avery.
Hi, thank you. Today I'm going to be reading my poem Nisus. And just a preface, Nisus and Euryalus were two lovers mentioned in Virgil's epic poem, the Aeneid, so just a bit of context. Scarlet tears fed the water of my baptism as I fell into your eyes. Bathed in blood, my nostrils and limbs scarred from the dirty dagger of defeat, I cast my gelid spectral cloak aside, desirous of every glistening diamond upon you. Youth's ardent heat coursing through your veins, and thus through my own, shattering my heart, I took a shard and struck with the viper's fury, cutting away all that wasn't you, so that I might gaze upon your wild and winsome form, as it took the soul of Hermes. Light, sturdy feet, tangent with a soul untouchable, my own forever locked inside the beautiful boy already smiling at me from the finish line. Do you remember that time upon the mountaintop? Insatiable in the arc of pearls gilded among those soft roses, blooming on the cheeks untouched by the rough promises of tomorrow, you took another cordial shard, the mere fragment by which I swore, gently tearing me apart as you bestowed the ghost's kiss to a woman soon to be bound within shells of black, promising her the ends of the earth. I lost myself in our tangled fingers as we let the grains of salt in the tumultuous waves build the unyielding wall before the afterlife, the whispers of the air echoing your heady declarations as I watched the cowls of ash polluting the sky, the gods beginning to weep. Do you remember that time upon the mountaintop? Sweet crystals of dew marking us with the wealth of two kings, laying before our endless kingdom of Latin dust, earthy coins, and noble vines. Plump purple pearls upon our necklaces, fig juice dripping between our lips as we spoke of love and conquest. You scared me for the first time after Aeneas left, when you asked me how to throw a spear, watch it glide like the shadowed hawk as it dabs for a field mouse, piercing it with boundless talons, the mercy of steel in them. Phobos wrapped the grating sand of his mist around my mortal heart, a second from demolition in your august hand, tender, able to cast it down with tempestuous paroxysm, yet so unbearably genial and pulchritudinous as it stroked the shaft's splinter in my weathered palm. You clung to my hand not like the hawk but like the lover. I longed to set you free, begging you to soar above the clouds and trail drops of ambrosia along the scarlet petals of your mouth, delivering its taste to my grave as your lips danced above my paradise of soil. Do you remember that time upon the mountaintop? Sweet crystals of dew marking us with the wealth of two kings, laying before our endless kingdom of Latin dust, earthy coins, and noble vines. Plump purple pearls hanging luscious above us, fig juice dripping between our lips as we spoke of love and conquest. Why must we have spoken of war if love is to be only fairer? I became you and you became me as we stalked and slaughtered, the chants of midnight lavish on the glimmer of our blades in the moonlight. Celine's veil trembling well over two pious soldiers as I lost myself to that which was not us. In your deadly imitation of every killing stroke, I saw love and fury, the searing ivory of the brand just across from the nectar of Venus's quartz fountains. Its pools burned my hand. Oh dear boy, the pride I felt as your hand joined its complement, adorning the chestnut crown of curls with the silver prize of our death. Together clothed in those crimson tendrils that snaked around our bodies, I felt the eternity of a glacier cripple me, this pain worse when shared. To no other would I give the final vestiges of the war drum from which you made a lyre. Hearing your cry so sharp so as to cut my veins deeper than the flutes of battle, even in death, only your sleep separated us. All but one of the last fragments lay in the arrows lodged in Brutulian backs and chests, devotion my last weapon. Let me too then join you for a waltz around the stars as I fall beside you, and so we will wake from the dream of death with the eternal lantern of my kiss. Thank you.
Thank you, Avery. Let's see. Got a message in front of me. Sorry, Zoom. You can do that later. So let's introduce our next reader. Jaden Goldfein is a sophomore pursuing a BA in writing from Point Loma Nazarene University. Her work has appeared in Blue Marble Review, Bridge Inc., and Foreshadow Magazine. She loves Jesus, her friends, and Stranger Things. And you can find her on Twitter at J_Goldfein. So welcome, Jaden.
Cool. All right. Well, hi, everybody. Like she said, my name is Jaden Goldfein, and I'm going to be reading the opening scene from my short story, Night Falling. Quick disclaimer, it's a little intense, but we'll get through it. It'll be a good time. So this is Night Falling. Sierra is shuffling out of the bathroom with a yawn when the front door opens. She pauses, her brow furrowing, and she turns her head toward the top of the stairwell. For a moment, the house is still, the clinking of the plates her father is putting away, slicing off into a void of silence. The analog clock at the end of the hallway says it's 10:54 at night. She hears the door shut. I thought I took your keys away, her father says. I want to see my kid, a low female voice slurs, and Sierra rushes to cover her mouth so they don't hear her gasp. Are you drunk? Her father asks. No. Chelsea, I want to see Sierra. Her mother's heels click twice against the hardwood floor. Well, you don't get to. You don't live here anymore, and our daughter is 17. She can decide for herself whether she wants to see you or not. She's not your daughter. Excuse me? Mine. She's mine. I gave birth to her and you didn't. You are so drunk. I want to see her. Sierra holds her breath as she tiptoes across the carpet, hiding behind the wall as she peeks down the stairs. Her father is standing at the dishwasher in the kitchen, a plate still in his hand as he grits his teeth, glaring at the woman who must be standing in the entryway. Get out of my house, he intones, but her mother's shrill voice overlaps him. Sierra, she calls, her heels clacking as she stumbles into view, her red dress and frizzy hair all Sierra sees before she darts back around the corner, hissing in a breath. She presses her back against the wall as her eyes flit to her bedroom door. She'd have to cross in front of the stairwell to get there, an action that would most certainly get her caught. Sierra, baby, don't you dare go up there, her father yells, and she flinches, listening as pounding footsteps race to the bottom of the stairs, the banister creaking as something presses against it. He must be blocking her from coming up, she concludes. Sierra, Robert, move. Sierra, baby, it's your mom. Chelsea, you need to leave. Sierra had 16 years to see her, and you know what? Her mother shrieks, and Sierra's heart flattens against her ribcage, her breaths erratic as she glances around the corner to see that her father has taken a hold of her mother's wrists, towering over her and doing his best to back her away from the stairs. You know what, Chelsea, he continues, and she struggles against his hold. Let me go. You hurt her. You hurt her, and you hurt me, and you hurt this family, and I love her, Robert. You don't hurt the things you love on purpose. He's almost got her to the entryway now, and if they go any further, she'll lose sight of them, or rather, they will lose sight of her. She angles her body toward her room, fervently glancing between them and the open doorway. It's not my fault she's crazy, her mother screams, and Sierra squeezes her eyes shut. Seeing things in the night does not make her crazy, her father roars, and despite the shame stabbing her heart, a hint of a smile graces her lips at his defense of her. Her eyes dart around the corner to check if she's clear yet, only to watch as her mother lifts her foot to kick her father in the thigh with her stiletto. He cries out as the heel pierces his skin, his hold loosening, and she manages to stagger around him. Sierra! Her father grunts, grabbing her wrist to pull her back, and that's when Sierra runs, taking 4 steps across the hallway into her room and closing the door as quietly as she can. The sounds of the scuffle downstairs are muffled as she pants, glancing wildly around her room for something to bolt her door shut with. Her phone buzzes on the dresser, the screen glowing in the darkness, and she cranes her neck to peer over at it. Run, it reads. It's from her father. In the next beat, a thwack comes from downstairs, and it's her father's cry of pain that shoves her into yanking her phone from its charging cable, stuffing her feet into her tennis shoes, and throwing on her jacket. She can hear the thunking of stiletto heels against their wooden stairs, and she hesitates for half a moment before she sets her jaw and jerks her door open. Sierra, baby! Her mother stands on the 5th step, wobbling as she reaches out for her daughter, and Sierra rushes past, using the woman's instability to shove her against the railing as she takes steps 2 at a time. She glimpses her father in her peripheral vision. He's collapsed against the kitchen island, a hand clutching at the right side of his face with a stream of blood dripping from his nose, and she rushes past him into the entryway as her mother resumes screaming her name. Yanking the door open, she darts outside, slams the door closed, and begins to sprint as fast as she can away from her home. And to find out where she goes, you can read the rest of the story in the journal. Thank you.
Cliffhanger. Okay. So you now know where to go. The link is in the chat. And I encourage everybody to please go finish reading the stories. And now we're going to introduce our next reader. Chris Grimstad is a queer artist creating from their experiences. Voice Equals Medium explores how voice intersects with having a speech impediment, being a singer, songwriter, and activist, and experiencing dysphoria. Resurrection examines martyrdom in trans activism. Chris Reloaded is a Matrix-inspired reflection on the binary's duality. And a side note, I'm really glad to see that people in your generation know about the Matrix, because my kids don't. And which traps trans people yet creates a code to express gender. And in Forbidden Fruit, they reclaim Adam and Eve's story, rejecting the notion of queerness as unnatural. And I know that there are a few pieces of art also in the issue. So Chris, when you're ready for me to share, just give me a signal and I will do a share screen. So with that, I welcome Chris Grimstad.
Thank you. Can you hear me? I just want to double check.
We
Okay.
can hear you. Are you going to be off camera?
Yeah, I can't
Okay.
turn my camera on because of the unstable connection.
No problem. We can hear you great. That's good solution.
Okay, good.
Okay.
I'll start with Voice Equals Medium. I'm not going to be reading it because it's too long, but I just wanted to discuss some of the themes in it. As you've already heard, it's about my relationship with my voice. I have had a speech impediment with not being able to say my R's for pretty much my whole life. I have gotten to the point where I can say them more clearly now, but it's about that being in the speech system and the infantilization and shame that came with that. And then when I was getting older, I started writing songs and I became more comfortable with my voice and using it to express my emotions, particularly with falling in love with a girl for the first time and realizing I was queer. Then I kind of went on to this new phase of my life this year with activism. I have a club with actually Avery and Nick, who are both here today. That is for other queer students at the school to kind of create a community for them and try to be their voice on campus. And then on to with Zoom this year, the problems that have come up with having a voice that with the way that my voice affects how people perceive me and how they perceive my gender and how they treat me in because of that. And then Forbidden Fruit. Oh, can you share the images?
I sure can. Hang on just a half a sec. Let me get it on the screen. Here we go.
Okay, Forbidden Fruit was really fun. It's just this carving I did in an apple with an X-Acto blade, and I wanted to really connect the fruit to the message that I was having. So Forbidden Fruit is a reclamation of the Adam and Eve story that shows two femmes in the story rather than the typical hetero pairing of Adam and Eve. And I wanted to reclaim that biblical space with this, as well as assert that queer relationships are natural because, as the title Forbidden Fruit suggests, they are often treated as forbidden or unnatural desires when they really aren't. And then if you can go to Chris Reloaded. Wow, I got it in the right order by guessing. This piece is the one that is reflecting on the Matrix. I became really interested in the trans allegory that there is in the Matrix because both the creators are trans women. And it's kind of this thing where the Matrix lets you materialize yourself, how you visualize yourself in your head. And I think that really relates to how the binary works, with being able to express your gender through this sort of code and control how people view you, while also being a thing that is extremely hard, particularly for non-binary people such as myself, who don't want to be perceived as part of that binary. So this is kind of me like redesigning myself as how I visualize myself in my head. And then the last one is Resurrection. This one was kind of a parallel to the Christ story, where I wanted to examine how activism plays a role in trans life inherently, specifically with martyrdom, because a lot of trans people do die for their activism or simply because they are trans and are living as their true selves. And it's kind of a reflection on that and how our names are carried forward in activism in the future, even after we die. And kind of, I just wanted to elevate queer people to that status of being like a religious icon. I think a lot of my pieces are about reclamation. So yeah, that's all.
Well, thank you so much, Chris. And were you going to read a poem, or was that you were just going to share the art?
No, that's it.
Okay, got it. All right. Well, I hope you all go back and take a look at those art pieces more closely. That apple looks like it must have taken a long time to carve, and all of that. So I want to introduce our next reader. Nick Kawecki is a senior, class of 2021 at Los Osos High School. They are passionate about art, activism, and just spreading some good vibes into this world, something we all need. Writing and art has been a huge part of their mental health journey and recovery. As they move into college, they hope to become a high school English teacher and to continue sharing art. So welcome, Nick.
Hello. In this issue, I have gotten a poem published as well as a short story and some photographs. And if you have looked at any of those, you may notice quite a contrast between them. In my photos, I really like to capture just the tiny kind of mundane moments of life that often go unnoticed. I am a huge believer in the fact that we need to romanticize our lives because the majority of our lives are made up of tiny little pointless moments. And if we don't give those meaning, then, well, what meaning is there? So I enjoy just trying to find beauty in things every day. As far as my writing, I like to use it as a way of expressing more complex and often darker concepts. My poem, Miles to Go, which if you are familiar with Robert Frost's work, then you will know that that title is an allusion to his poem, Stopping by the Woods on a Snowy Evening. I wrote that piece in response to Robert Frost's poem, but I really wanted to look at it from the point of view of someone who struggles against the capitalist cycle and my place in it, and just struggling with how I'm already a part of it and contributing to it, despite the harm it does to the planet and to people. The short story I got published was largely based on my experiences with anxiety. I have an anxiety disorder which has greatly impacted my life and what I'm able to do. So I just kind of wanted to express how I experience fear, because it is something which I often do have to deal with, even at the most unhelpful moments. That feeling of intense and irrational fear. So I will read a bit of that. It reads, "Horror movies don't scare me. They are far too gentle. Blood isn't as thick as everyone seems to think it is. Blood is so, so thin, and it runs down your arms and drips onto the floor, and now all your clothes are stained. I can't find a shirt that doesn't have some of you on it. Real horror doesn't happen in haunted houses or graveyards filled with fog. Real horror happens in dingy public bathrooms where the harsh green lights flicker, but not because of a demon. It's because even the city can't pay their bills. My parents can't pay their bills. Your parents don't care about you. The city doesn't care about us. We are alone. There is no one but us left in the entire world. It's just you and me in this dingy public bathroom. The lights flicker again. Your eyes are empty and static stares back at me when you look at me, like someone pulled the plug years ago. We are alone. I am alone. I wake up covered in sweat. I remember that you are not real. You died years ago along with my grandmother. I turn on the light, but the switch refuses to flip. It is covered in tar. My parents can't pay the bills. Somewhere inside my stomach, a light bulb flickers. We are back in the bathroom, and the light hurts my eyes. My hand is covered in tar. Your hand is covered in blood. I reach out towards you, and you reach back. Our fingers laced together. We are alone, and we are a monster. I close my eyes against the harsh fluorescence. When I open them, we are in a large living room, but nothing here is living. My shoulder burns. There is hot tar melting us together, dripping down our collarbones and closing the gap between our rib cages. I keep forgetting that I am made of plastic. I must not forget. The room is large, but I know the walls are closing in. The carpet is a rich blood red, but I know that is not the color of blood. I know the color of blood. The furniture is black velvet, but I know that if I touch them, they will not be soft. The chairs are too big enough to get lost in. The room smells like cloves and cinnamon and iron. I choke on it, and when I cough, the scent of iron grows stronger. Maybe it is the blood pouring out of my mouth, or maybe it is the corpse standing rigid on the other side of the room. She turns and her eyes are brighter than yours, but there are hornets buzzing in her mouth. I squeeze my eyes shut. I know that corpse is my future, and I cannot bear to see it. When I regain my sight, we are back in the bathroom, except there is no we. I am alone. I am the monster that is created by our joining. I cannot bear to see it. I wake up covered in sweat. I turn the light on, and it fills the room with a warm glow. There is no tar. My parents can pay the bills. Blood drips down my arm, far too quick for me to catch. Your tongue presses against the wound, lapping up all that is left. I am not alone. Hope you enjoyed.
Thank you so much, Nick. So I'm going to introduce our next reader, who was also one of our teen guest editors. Suroshri Paul is an undergraduate student of Presidency University's BA Honors English program. She was a nominee for 2 consecutive years for Story Mirror's Author of the Year Award, that 2018 and 2019. And she has published in the International Kolkata Book Fair in 2020 and has other forthcoming works. She is currently based in West Bengal, India. So please welcome Suroshri Paul.
Hi, everyone. So the poem that has been selected for this teen issue of Inlandia is titled Agony, Can You Wait? Just a disclaimer, this poem is basically based on my personal dilemmas, which I was experiencing back in 2020, completely home alone with my family. But yeah, considering the time that we are still going through and having a lot to recover from. I certainly do not ask any of you to enjoy it while I'm reading, but I do hope that you can relate to it. And I hope that you realize that you are not the only one suffering. And there are many and many across the globe who are going through the same. And obviously, we are in this together. And as they say, this too shall pass. So I'll start reading. Agony, can you wait? Can you not stop hitting my door? Collapses of my lover's embrace is turning pale. Ah, my sick leaves of your spring tree. Let them fall off all at once. Let me die at the proem of dawn. It's been long since I have looked at the sun and wondered of my friend's eyes, what a beauty. It's been long since it's raining inside heavy and my home, my head is rotting wet. Agony, can you wait? Thank you.
Thank you, Suroshri. And thank you for joining us from another time zone. And we are very glad to have you here tonight. Our next reader is Abby Pelletieri, and she is currently a student at Los Osos High School and will be attending UC Riverside in the fall. She participated in San Bernardino County's Poetry Out Loud competition, which opened the door to the world of poetry for her. Through this experience, she was inspired to start writing her own work, her first being To Be a Woman. So welcome, Abby.
Hi, I'm Abigail Pelletieri, and I'm going to be reading my poem, To Be a Woman. To be a woman. I sat in my room staring at my reflection. To be a woman is to be compliant. With every breath, think not of oxygen, but of the way you look while taking it. Dress not in what you enjoy, but in what others will enjoy to see you in. When you look in the mirror, critique every visible sign that you are real, because beauty does not lie in your eyes, but in those that lie upon you. I look down upon myself with rigid eyes. Be confident. I am beautiful. With every beat of my heart, a beam of grace radiates through my veins, out every pore in my skin, captures every person near me, draws them in, only for them to discover that I am unreachable. Be humble. My thoughts are the jacket placed over a puddle to keep the feet of the important dry, while my ideas become drenched with the very hope that they will look down, notice, and deem them vital. My body is not my own, but is a servant to whoever wants her for a moment before being thrown aside and labeled unworthy. Be intelligent. My brain scribbles blueprints of my thoughts as consistently as a clock ticks. The notepads of my originality fill my body and spill out my mouth to inspire the books behind others' eyes. Be approachable. I am content when knowing that you are living up to your potential. My warmth cools to only reach slightly beyond my body as the clock that is my mind slows. Gradually, I grow tired of inspiring until finally I stop. But you were never told to slow yourself, so your mind and ideas continue to overflow, and the excess heat touches my skin, seeps into my body, and reminds me of a time when I too was allowed to be myself. To be a woman is to be silenced. Now the thought of what could have been is the only thing occupying my quiet, compliant mind. Thank you.
Thank you. So our next reader is Isabel Pinto, who is a high school sophomore at Los Osos High School. She is vice president of her school's Key Club, as well as research director of the Human Rights Club and president of the Innovation Club, where she volunteers, writes about solar panels, and manages the science fair, respectively. Isabel is also co-founder of the Stars and Snacks blog on WordPress, and is a content creator on CuriosSTEM. In her spare time, she enjoys baking, programming, and reading. So welcome, Isabel.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Isabel, like she said, and I will be reading Shielded or Sheltered, which is one of my poems. Okay. I was born unmasked. No cover, no shield, skin fragile, skin unbroken, no weapons to wield. Guardians have shields and weapons of their own. But scars come so easily when anyone can see, so I built my first mask, perfect and clean. Throwing rocks at a shield hurts not but the shield. And if this one was broken and one was built anew, it was okay, really. Masks shield your skin from truth. It's easy with practice, just a wooden circle with paint. And heapings of masks, each one custom made, perfect daughter, perfect student, a mask for every day. And if I had 1,000 faces, maybe one would be enough for someone, anyone, whose mask wouldn't mind me. The thing about masks is this. If you wear one long enough, it grows closer to your skin, less easy to pull away. The line between grows thin. What does the shield protect then, if no one stands to fight? And if I cut it off, what else would there be? Flesh, neglected, rotten behind a mask. Would anyone wish to see? Soon, it is just a round piece of wood shivering in the wind. So the mask stays on and grows closer every day until I look in the mirror and can't pull it away. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So we'll keep going. We have quite a few readers today. So our next reader is also one of the editors for this issue. Shreya Roy is a 13-year-old writer and composer from California. Her work has appeared in the literary journals Stone Soup, Choya Needles, and Howl. Additionally, she is passionate about music with training in piano and violin, even reaching California state level in the PTA Reflections competition for music composition. She was the president of her school student council and received the 2019 Hope of America Scholarship from the Kiwanis Foundation. She loves reading and the escape it offers. So welcome, Shreya.
Hi, everyone. I'm Shreya Roy, and I will be reading a little bit of my story called My Reflection. Can I take your order, hon? She asked, smiling at me. She was a new waitress. I didn't recognize her, though I was sure I knew everybody in that small diner on Redlands Boulevard. She was a middle-aged woman with hair graying at the roots. I smiled back after reading her name tag and confirming that I did not, in fact, know her. I turned in the booth, opening my mouth to order. That's when she had her moment, the moment I feel that everyone who meets me has. She stared at my face, eyes widening, then realized how she had reacted, seeming horrified. Keeping her gaze firmly on her notepad, she took my order and walked away. After watching her disappear into the kitchen, I looked out at the window, attempting to forget about her reaction. However, the dark night ensured that the only thing I saw was the one thing I did not want to see, my reflection. 3 years ago, I was caught in the middle of an acid attack while vacationing in the Czech Republic. I didn't remember anything from the attack, and the doctors who treated me were the ones who filled me in. I would regain my memory with time, they told me, time to process the trauma. I wasn't the target, just an unlucky witness, they said. The flesh on half of my left cheek had been damaged, but other than that, I'd gotten out unscathed. Compared to the target, I was fortunate. The acid almost killed her, and she'd lost an eye. However, the target was hospitalized. I was out and about in the world, dealing with stares, sympathy, all of it. I went through pain every day, too. The sound of the plate jolted me out of my thoughts. I looked up, expecting to see the woman. Instead, I saw a man, a waiter who I'd seen many times, one of my best friends. His face had cracked into a big grin. Hey Neil, how are you doing? I asked him. The corners of his bright eyes crinkled. I'm great, Charlotte. What about you? Same old, I told him. Nodding and still grinning, Neil walked away. After devouring my food and waving goodbye to all my friends in the waitstaff, I stepped into the hot August night of Southern California. Being a student at the University of Laverne College of Law, I suppose I did prefer summer because of break, but I had always been more of a winter person. My car, a white pickup truck, stood tall and lonesome in the moonlight. I climbed in and drove home. My phone rang, but I did not pick it up. After a short drive, I unlocked the door to my loft, ready to get into bed. Suddenly, my head snapped up. My heart was racing. I had a feeling I wasn't alone. I could hear my heart beating faster with every passing second. That's when I saw her. Suddenly, my knees were giving out and I was on the floor. The last thing I remember before blacking out is her face. And if you want to read the rest, you can read the journal.
Thank you. Another cliffhanger. So go finish the story after this program. So I will introduce our next reader, who is also another one of the teen guest editors. Dia Shah says they are merely a middle school student, although I would say not merely. Being a middle school student is pretty hard. That's, of course, my interjection. So Dia Shah is the writer of a blog, a Wattpad story, and is someone in the process of writing a novel. And she has developed a need, a desperation for writing. From birth in the heart of New York to living a young life in South Carolina, she has relied on revealing herself through the free yet careful art of writing. In her free time that is not spent writing, you can catch her dancing to the beautiful beats of music or reading, capturing new experiences and being reborn in her own mind. So welcome, Dia.
Hi, I'll be reading two poems. One of them is about the earth and a young girl, and the second one is about racism. So I'll get started. The first poem is called Her. When was the earth ever fair to those who hurt her? For the galaxy laid itself in her eyes. The moon comforted her body in the bliss of the sun. The ocean blanketed her soul, for the world was down to her feet. The rain stops when her smile reveals, for happiness spreads when she speaks. If life was ever to fail, she would be saved, for her hands accompanied the stars. She's too broken to pick up her own pieces, for the sky crushed her too low, for the people killed her long before she lived. The night dwindles in her palm, for the day creases in her cheek. She holds the tree with such warmth, for her mind is earth of its own. The roads cover her arms, for her legs are the passageway to her heart. The brown streaks her eyelashes, for the planets rest in her hair. But that was just it, for nothing ever lasts, and neither did her story, for the earth laid her down one day and never picked her up after. And the second poem I'll be reading is about racism that I faced, especially last year when COVID started. So it's called Racism. Oh, what a pity, they say, yet they pity none. The marks that stain my arm, the gash that raises alarm, bones broken, yet another one of their charms. The fight that started with burning flames shall end with proclaim, if only our voices weren't muffled by the very cloth that they once pledged to troth. Soon the circle was divided by the ragged edges of the remarks. The color of my skin raises hands. My faults were never the barrier. It was the color that warmed me, that kept its tint on my face, so dark it could turn red to ebony. It was never the words, but the language. Don't hold your breath, you'll drown anyway. Must I color my skin white? Must I forget the pain to be heard? It's all our fault. Beyond the green grass lays hope, but we'll forever be laboring our days away from the green grass. My skin color is the reason I'm scared. Thank you.
Thank you, Dia. Thank you for sharing that. Our next reader is Sadhvi Swaminathan, and she is an 8th grader who resides in the suburbs of Chicago. She started her poetry journey with inspiration from watching the Louder Than a Bomb poetry competition. She was most recently published in the Teen Author Bootcamp poetry collection for her poem, The Race. Her other interests include playing the violin and singing South Indian classical music. She greatly admires the poetry of Shakespeare and hopes to one day write like him. So welcome, Sadhvi.
Hello, my name is Sadhvi Swaminathan, and my poem is called Music. I raised my bow above the string, my eyes trained on the music. My fingers shifted back and forth, toying with the notes they had been trained for hours to play just for this moment. My blood pulsed through my veins like the Amazon River. It roared in my ears with the terrifying thought of what I had to do. My fingers settled as my heart dropped to the deep depths of Tartarus. My bow touched the string as my eyes closed. The river coursing through my veins slowed to a gentle trickle. As my fingers shifted into position for the next measure, I was no longer myself. I lived in a cloud of dreams, and my soul spun freely with me. My arms swung passionately across the strings. I relieved the weight of myself into my violin, each swing of the bow taking off some of the pressure. Within seconds, the cloud of aspiration and hope in which I had lived then thundered down my deflating soul. As I pulled my violin from my shoulder, the weight of reality came crashing back to me. My brain relished one last memory of my playing, only to critique rather than relish. As my violin was tucked under my arm, the applause stormed from all sides of the room, stampeding my ears and trampling my soul, shattering the silence in which I mourned the end of the piece which let me soar. I arose from the bow that I had taken, to the perfect score awaiting me from the judges. Yet my joy was absent, as I felt only myself. Where there should have been joy, only anger and emptiness resided. How could they judge my blissful haven? How could they judge the music which carried me away into the land of my own? I longed for music with my every breath. The music plays the tune of my soul. It courses through my veins and pumps my heart. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing that. So our next reader is Emily J. Wang, and she is an incoming junior at Los Osos High School. She is the president of her school's Key Club and an avid volunteer of the San Bernardino Red Cross chapter, serving on the Youth Leadership Committee. Emily is also the co-founder of the Stars blog and enjoys writing poems and stories. In addition to writing, she loves biology, paper crafts, and any good fantasy book series. So welcome, Emily.
Hello. Today I'll be reading my three-part poem that's inspired by the passage of human generations. 1. The Dragon's Betrayal. Bright egg in a blanket of flowers so fair, tucked in lush grass, arranged with care, sparkle and shine the vibrant shell, how a gem was born, only angels could tell. Oh, the beauty, rivaled only by the masses' adoration. Spores of dancing sunlight play upon the glorious peaked dome of crystal facets. An aura of warm air pulsating and pumping nourishing life through hidden veins. Ah, it duly rises and pushes through the shell into the bright world, claiming nature as its own and filling empty space with its rousing cry. Trees shiver and the masses bow low. For leather wings cast shadows on their eyes, and fangs cut sweet grass from the cracking earth. Blind and hungry desolation finds host in the caretakers it claimed. They cower. Bereaved, they slink slowly into the night, no longer lit by the egg they so loved. 2. The Bird's Escape. Whisper, whisper, wake and blister. The world's awry, your eyes a trickster. An egg encased in sorry neglect that no one dared to even unmake, for the one before had been perfect, who had known it had been a mistake. So it emerged into an even colder world than the one it knew in the egg, and unfurled stiff wings lacerated by icy frost. How could it know the true cost of what had happened, for it had not yet been born, had not tasted the regret that older ones shared between mutters of the past, hiding the truth behind shutters as blinding as the wings on their eyes and inviting the debilitating ice. It knew it was cold and saw the snow, so it jumped and was met by the endless sky of light. But it could not fly, crippled by the past, and knew only that it must escape, so it tried. 3. The butterfly's forgetfulness. Flutter here, flutter there. So many flowers to taste, too many flowers, an entire meadow. Oh, the delight to have so much so fast. Remember, they say, and its countenance gets grave. It had learned about the past before, the time gripped by death and war. It had been dark and so very bitterly cold. The world had been a mess, it's told. Open the eyes and see none of that dark, for that had been chased away by biting beaks and mighty nest builders who had bravely made the world anew, and now flowers grew. Flitter, flutter, remember! But remembrance is nothing to a butterfly, so it giggled and reveled among blossoms under the bright, bright sun, in lush, sweet grass. The perfect bed for a dragon egg. Be thankful, be aware, and never forget. Take flight. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Emily. So we have 2 more readers, and I invite our audience, if you do have any questions for any of our readers or guest editors, to do put your questions in the chat, and we'll get them at the end. Our next reader is Derek Weinstock. He was born in New York City, but moved to California at the age of 2. He has always loved the stark and beautiful geography of California, as well as the strange, wonderful culture that pervades the entire state. Weinstock has won several awards for his fiction, including a Young Arts Foundation Merit Award and several from the Scholastic Art and Writing Awards. He is 18 years old and hopes to continue writing for the rest of his life. And we hope so too. So welcome, Derek.
Thank you very much. This story I wrote 3 years ago. It's probably the first really good thing I ever wrote. It's called Fire Months. In December, it was a space heater blaze in a nice apartment, and we all listened in on the scanner and went out to see. It was our first time, so Dale didn't even notice us. We didn't spend much time watching him, but we heard his name called out by one of the guys. Could have been Adams or Friedman, I really can't remember, and repeated it over and over to each other like parrots. Dale, give me a hand. Dale, give me a hand. Dale. In January, it was a car accident, as usual, as we would soon learn. We all piled in, as eager as the first time, or maybe more. Now we really knew it could work. We never talked much, but Margot brought tequila and we passed it around. Jed uncharacteristically refused. I'm driving, he barked, and shoved the bottle away, his normally careless eyes fixed fast on the road. We watched from the hood of Jed's Civic as they opened the doors with the jaws of life, these great big mechanical scissor-looking things. We listened to the sirens, crunch of metal. In February, at yet another car accident, I'm only telling you the good ones, Dale noticed us. His old face ruddy with cold, he approached. They were clearing the area, a stretch of highway which normally ran freely, but was now clogged with traffic. Jed had to pull over to the shoulder to be safe to watch. Not our best view. Dale comes up and goes, "You all broke down?" For a second, we didn't know who should talk. Margot was too busy trying to hide the tequila in her purse. And I wasn't the type to talk up because, despite the fact that I'm the tallest and the handsomest, I'm too nervous to make any decisions. But then Jed says that we just stop for a moment, sir. The sir startled me. Dale looks us up and down. We weren't special kids in his eyes, and of course, he's right. Didn't I see you at some other locations? His tone wasn't menacing. It's the same tone he uses when he says, "Now, do you have insurance?" Or, "Calm down, ma'am. Who is inside the building right now?" Or, "Sandwiches, Jersey Mike's." Jed didn't know how to respond to that. Dale waited patiently before saying, "Well, be careful around fires, kids. It's not friendly. Always keep a safe distance away." All Jed said was, "Yes, sir." In March, we got a couple of dull fires, and right on St. Patty's Day, an exciting one. We don't observe St. Patrick's Day here, but we each found $50 somewhere and added it to the pool. Margot freely admitted to stealing hers from her mom, and my family's wealth is something I like to keep a secret, so I didn't say a word about my birthday. But Jed's 50 comes in a roll of 1s, 5s, and 10s. He doesn't have much, and the expression on his face tells Margot and me both where he got it, if we didn't know all along. Margot looks old with her hair in a bun, so as usual, she buys the elf. Jed seemed grateful that his shame had been converted to tequila. We considered switching to beer for the expense a couple weeks in, but Margot flat out refused, insisting she'd found the perfect drink for our hobby. There was a gas leak at this place not a block from our favorite Mexican place. It blew up. They pulled out 4 or 5 survivors, all told. And then Margot yelped, "Dale's got another one." Then, after a moment, "Holy shit, it looks bad." It was right, as it turned out. Dale did CPR right there on the sidewalk. And while I was thinking about how uncomfortable it looked for the poor guy on his back, while Margot paused, mouth open, jewel halfway to her slightly open lips, while Jed stared straight ahead, knuckles white on the hood of his car, teeth gritted, while hard-faced Dale pumped and pumped with all his strength, this corpse just sat there on the sidewalk. It took the last of what it could take from the world. When everything was over for the second time that night, we went for food, but finding none of us could eat, left the restaurant without a word. I, and Margot confessed she felt the same, never felt comfortable going back there again. In April, after a regular car accident where nobody was much hurt, Dale told us outright to stop going to fires. "For your own safety," he said, looking at us each in our dark eyes. He was worried about us, had seen us and talked to us and told us to get back, get back, get back. His calm, clear, old man voice like the drone of the highway outside sending us off to bed. Jed didn't look at him. In May, Margot and I made excuses not to go. We had gotten what we secretly wanted, and now we're left with the consequences. Jed was getting angry at us. In June, there were brush fires. Jed prevailed on us to go, and we watched from the car, hiding our faces from the firemen. In June, Jed also started paying for and drinking most of the tequila himself. We worried a little. I offered to drive, but of course he said no. In July, he parked closer and closer to the fires, until his front wheels were mere inches from the embers. The brush fires were too numerous for the firefighters to protect with more than caution tape. These days, our ritual of waiting by the scanner was no longer required. No more excitement, just destruction. Jed would occasionally toss one of his grubby 5s or 10s into the fire and watch the president's face burn away. In August, Dale caught us for the last time. He wasn't friendly this time. He wasn't calm. "All right, kids, you think this is funny what you're doing? You could suffer serious injury, okay? Next time I see you down here, I'll call the police on you and..." Jed didn't say sir this time. That part of him was hid away somewhere we couldn't reach. He pushed Dale, pushed him hard, and when the stocky old man tottered back, He got in the car and drove away. I don't think he noticed we weren't in the back seat. I can picture him yelling for the Fuego, this shitty tequila brand we always get. I can picture him turning around to scream at us and realizing no one was there. But I don't have to picture him turning across the median into oncoming traffic because I was watching. Margot and I didn't even think about what we were doing, we just ran. We didn't hear Dale's voice shouting for the others to get in the truck, to follow him to the scene of the crash, to Jed's broken body locked in the crushed cab of his filthy car. We got there seconds after they did. The scene is suspended for me. Dale jumping down from the truck, jaws of life in one of his hands and a crowbar in the other. The trucker pushing his way out of his mostly wrecked cab, smell of the burning brush. Everything was destruction. Everything was fire. Except Dale. I watched him jam the crowbar into the stuck car door and create a dent, tiny gap to force the great hydraulic jaws of life into. The strength of the hydraulics belonged to Dale in that moment, and the car door could not stand against him. We watched as he pulled our friend over his shoulder and carried him to the ground a short distance away, where he pushed down on his chest again and again and again. It wasn't in Margot's nature to look away or to seek comfort in others, but she did, dropping her weight against my old, comfortable hoodie, sobbing. I held her, but found I couldn't look away myself. Just wasn't in me. Again and again and again Dale tried, his old, strong arms pumping. Every second that dragged on was awful because I knew that Jed, who Margot and I loved like you'd love a real brother, was really, truthfully gone. And then Jed's eyes opened a little, and he coughed. He tried to get up, but Dale's hand, strong and comfortable as his old voice, kept him there. And I could finally turn away, bury my face in Margot's shoulder, and let go completely. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you for that. So I want to go ahead and introduce our final reader of the evening, and then invite any of our writers or editors if they would like to say any final few words about what it's been like writing this year and mostly being at home. So our final reader for the evening is Conway Jung, and she is the co-founder of Stars Blog. She's been writing in Chinese and English since the age of 6. She also goes by the name Jessie. I believe that is how the work is published in the journal. But she is an incoming junior at Los Osos High School and the president of her school's Human Rights Club and academic decathlon team. This is her first time being published, and she is working on a novel as well as a biography of her grandmother. So welcome, Conway.
Thank you. I'm very excited to share with everyone today. My work is called A Child's Story, and it's based on stories told by my grandmother, and also it includes a little bit of historical context so that everyone can better understand what she went through. And I'm going to read the first section of my story. It's called The Leap of Faith. Now, my grandmother was born in the Yan family Hell village on January 14th, 1953. It's a small village of around 1,000 people in Shandong province, China. Her earliest memory was eating at the cafeteria when she was 5. In the production team, where farmers worked for little, albeit equal pay, as part of the government-mandated centralized planning, everyone was compelled to eat together in a great mess hall, 3 meals a day. The events that led up to this way of life for 500 million people was the Great Leap. In an effort to demonstrate the country's might and improve international standings, Chairman Mao commanded that, starting in 1958, China was to ramp up its production efforts of iron and steel. Within 2 years' time, a country just recovering from World War II and an unprecedented civil war was to surpass the iron and steel production of England. Using this outdated metric, from the first industrial revolution to measure a country's economic might was not doubted by anyone. The necessity became clear to all Chinese people through propagandist media. So it began, and in the last 4 months of the year, the country had one single objective: to double its iron and steel output. Every family sacrificed their pots, pans, bicycles, knives, and just about everything else with metal in it to the effort. No one had anything to cook with, hence the cafeteria. When she was 5, my grandmother used to walk down to it 3 times a day with her little pail, hold it out, and ask for food, and get a full bucket of it. Dried sweet potatoes, boiled to be edible. They were leftovers from last year's harvest, meant to serve as the one and only staple for an entire family 365 days of the year. Tears welled in her eyes as she relayed how it was often so soggy that water would collect at the bottom of the pail. One can only imagine the image of a 5-year-old carrying food for the entire family of 7 3 times a day, though perhaps it was more pitiful that a 5-year-old alone was able to do it. That was how little they ate. My grandmother was the oldest of 4 siblings. She had 2 younger brothers and a younger sister. Measures to prevent life were, and still are, deemed universally secondaries to measures to sustain life. It was not uncommon for a family to have 8 or 9 children, as was the case with my grandfather. With no food and no clothes, the lack of contraceptives was not even a concern to a rural Chinese family such as my grandmother's at the time. Their family's meager pay was stretched thin among the children, etching lines of anxiety and worry permanently into my great-parents' visages. They had to work hours every day, yet it was not as if any of that mattered. The goal was communism, after all, and when no one was paid for extra effort, no one gave extra effort. There were no promotions or appreciation. Everyone got the same amount of money, no matter how much they worked. It did not help that in an attempt to convince the higher-ups the Great Leap goals were indeed being met, the officials blew the agricultural and industrial production numbers way out of proportion in the Central Committee. Too little food and too much demand, coupled with overly ambitious production goals and a lack of inspections and management, meant not enough food or money for anyone. Hence, the outrageous offerings of the cafeteria and the rationing of every life necessity. Hence, the constant hunger and suffering of 500 million people, including my grandmother. As soon as she could reach the kitchen counter, that was at around 5.5 years old, my grandmother was given the tasks of doing the dishes, assisting with cooking, taking care of her siblings, and retrieving water from the local well. It was a dreadful task. As the bourgeoisie around the world regulated the cold and heat of their water with simple movements of their fingers, the future of the proletariat was struggling with buckets up and down the road for it. In the winter, the edges of the well would freeze over, so that my grandmother had to squat down and use every muscle in her body to keep her balance, lest she might slip on the ice and tumble into the well. The frigid water that she retrieved would sting her small fingers and make washing extremely unpleasant. Coupled with the frostbite which frequently greeted the northerners every year since they had no spare clothes to keep warm, her skin would stay in pain for days, then itch for the rest of the winter, every winter. Just like hunger, cold, and the lack of necessities, the irksome red bumps became habitual. I like to think that my grandmother's generation took their own leap of faith when they were born. As children, they had no power. They were helpless in the face of hunger, fanaticism, and confusing change, and they fell hard. I suppose you could say that the adults failed to catch them with anything beyond empty faith. Make it generic, though. Let us not specify beyond just the adults. After all, no one likes people who disagree with faith. Thank you.
Thank you. That is very powerful work. And I'm just so impressed with everything I've heard tonight and seen tonight with the art. I'd like to bring you all back on screen if you are willing. I'm going to put us on gallery view. And I would love it if you want to unmute yourself, if you have anything you'd like to say about writing during the pandemic. Victoria?
Before they talk, I just want to say, well, thank them for being here and doing this, but also, you know, because of editing the journal, as you can imagine, you guys, I have read your pieces more than once and have worked on your pieces over a period of time. Each one of them has been in my mind, and they were lovely, and that's why they were chosen, and it was very enjoyable to read them. But I think even maybe more so enjoyable hearing you read with your own voice, especially so much of this about family and identity, and it's so nice to hear you. So thank you for coming, and you're all excellent readers. And you know, reading aloud is its own talent, I think, or at least it takes work. And I think you guys must have practiced before you got here. So thank you for doing that and for doing such a good job. I'm so happy to have heard the things that I've been working on. It's a real pleasure for me. So thank you very much. That's all.
Yeah. So yeah, I can just say the same thing as Victoria, in that you guys are fantastic. And I can't wait to see where you all go with your futures and your writing and your art. Would any of you like to speak about writing during the pandemic or editing, or just, I'm watching for any hands if you want to raise your hand or unmute. If you don't want to, though, I won't put you on the spot, and we can just say thank you. Yeah, Avery.
Hi. I just wanted to say I feel like writing this year has definitely been much more it's been easier and harder. I feel like being at home and just like being forced to kind of reflect a lot on different parts of yourself that maybe you just don't take the time to acknowledge, or you just kind of push aside during your daily life. I feel like the pandemic has really been helpful in amplifying those and kind of opening some of us up to writing what different parts of our lives that we didn't really think about before.
Yeah, I'm glad that you've been able to do that and spend some time on your creative work this year. Conway?
Right, and I think the quarantine has been an opportunity for me for as far as writing goes, because I've always loved writing. Just it's part of my life, and it's very stress relieving. But during the pandemic, it became something more because I had time to listen to stories from my grandparents who have really been through a lot, and I had time to pursue my interest of being a human rights activist, and all of this led me to write not out of, I suppose, leisure so much as this responsibility that I now feel for the subjects that I write about, and they are controversial to some people, and I simply telling the truth, like writing this biography, I have not all of the feedback was positive, but that's also a lesson for me, that the truth, no matter whether people like it or not, is really just the truth. And I think the pandemic just gave me time to deal with all of these things. And in some sense, I'm grateful for the fact that I am able to be safe in my home and I'm able to enjoy these things despite, this being a very, very hard time still. I'm just grateful for the opportunities that I have during this especially challenging time. And I'm also grateful for this platform to, submit more work here. And obviously, I'm sure everyone here has been putting in extra effort to keep their creative process going during the pandemic. And I really applaud everyone for that.
Likewise, I applaud you. And I think it's great that you are taking the opportunity to capture those family stories while you can and interview your grandmother. Chris, I see you want to say something.
Yeah, I just wanted to say this pandemic recently has been great in that I've had more time to put together kind of my old artwork and share that, because I just started my art count, which is a very scary thing for me to do. And it's been so great to be able to share my art in that way where like anyone can see it and like comment on it. So that's been really fun for me. And my Instagram is bioluminescent bitch, but the O is a 0. So I'll also put it in the chat.
Great. Definitely any of you who have social media or blogs, I heard a lot about journals and other platforms, do put it in the chat for anybody who can go find it and follow you. And
very quickly, also, I had
Yeah.
asked them to give the Instagram and the journal. So we'll be posting, you know, and when we do, we'll include them with theirs if they gave it to us. If they don't want us to have it, we don't have it.
Awesome. So we'll be watching for that on our Instagram, and we'll share it out. And you know, I'm really looking forward to going in. The issue just went live today, so I haven't been able to read any of these works yet, but I'm really looking forward to spending some time with all of them and reading them and giving them the time and attention that they deserve. You have all persevered through what has been a very difficult period. And, you know, I've said it before, but I will, you know, repeat it here. The pandemic hasn't been all downsides. There have been many upsides. We've got some of our readers here from, hi, Surushri. It's okay. If you want to share it, that's great. Or just put it in the chat if you can. But like we have a reader from India, we have a reader from Chicago, we have another reader from South Carolina. So we're zooming in from all over the place. So we're staying connected. And I'm feel all the richer for knowing all of you and for hearing your voices tonight. So anyone else want to chime in?
Also, I just like everything. I really like to thank you guys for providing this opportunity for all of us. I certainly look forward to writing for Inlandia every year. So I'd really like to thank you guys for all the hard work and effort you put into compiling the magazine and giving teens a chance to express themselves. So really thank you, all of you.
You are welcome. And you know, it's all of you because it's guest edited by you teens and it's all work by you guys. So we're happy to give you this platform. You know, if I had this when I was your age, I'm absolutely certain this would have been, you know, I would have loved it. And I'm just glad that we're able to do this for you. You are the next generation. You are the future. Okay, so we don't have any questions from our audience in the chat. So I think, have you added everything to the chat that you'd like our folks at home to see? So folks at home, if you don't know this and you want to save the chat, you can click the 3 little dots on the right and there's a pop-up and it says save chat. Or if you are watching this on Facebook Live and would like some of that information, I can send it out after the fact. Just private message us on Facebook and we will, or even just comment on the post and I will get it to you one way or another. So with many thanks, especially to Victoria for all the hours she put into coordinating all of this and getting all the work up. And I hope to see you all again next year. So thank you for writing. Thank you for your words and have a great rest of your, well, it's not quite the weekend, almost one more day. So have a great night or morning, depending on where you are.